The Sofia Gray Show.
Hello, listeners and kinky friends. Welcome to the Sofia Gray Show, where we discuss all things sex, kinks, and fetishes. From the sex stories to the latest trends in the erotic world, we talk taboo transparently. This podcast is brought to you by Sofia Gray, the largest used underwear marketplace. I'm Tracy Bust.
And I'm Lacey Bloom.
And today, Miss Lacey, we are talking all about ownership.
Ownage. What's up? This is so appropriate too, because let me tell you a very, very embarrassing tidbit about my week.
Great.
I got a new Roku for the TV.
Uh-huh.
And, you can add your Netflix and your Hulu and all that jazz.
All that jazz, yeah.
All that jazz. And I had not tried out Peacock just yet, what is that, like the NBC streaming service?
Yes, I believe that's it, yeah.
And so they had a week-long free trial to do Peacock Unlimited. And when I saw that they had not one, not two, but all 3 50 Shades of Grey movies on Peacock Unlimited, you better believe I jumped at that deal.
Yeah.
And so that is my somewhat related to ownership story of the week, because I binge watched that mountain of garbage.
Oh, great.
All in a row. Oh,
that
gosh, what
fun.
a treat.
Yeah.
What a treat.
What a treat. I gotta finish up the garbage. You know what I mean? I haven't taken out the rest of the garbage, if that makes any sense with that one. I.e. watch the last movie.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So, okay, Lacey, what do you think ownership means to you? Like, when you hear the term ownership in a BDSM relationship, what do you think of? What do you think of?
I mean, I always, I think of a relationship between a dom and a sub.
Mm-hmm.
I know that looks different for every couple.
Right.
And
yeah. This
isn't necessarily my particular kink, so it's not something that I think a lot about. But I don't know. I feel like, and I'm probably wrong, but I do kind of get the idea of like slave play in there as well. And somebody wearing a collar, bondage, somebody tied up. And again, I'm sure this applies to some couples, but definitely not everybody.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I think you're right about, like, when you think ownership, you do think slave play, you do think collar. But I think what's really important, and like you said, it is different for every couple or, throuple or whoever. So the idea of ownership means that you belong to someone or someone belongs to you in a BDSM relationship. And I think there's a difference, I was thinking, between belonging and then belonging. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's like the romantic, like, I belong to you, you have my heart. And then there's the I belong to you, you own me.
I always think of it as like a difference between like you belong with me as opposed to like you belong to me.
Oh, that's great. I think that's it. The with the two. Guys, we know grammar like no tomorrow.
I don't know if you knew this.
Welcome to the
us,
Grammar Podcast.
This episode is sponsored by Grammarly.
Yeah, the largest used grammar resource in the marketplace. Like I said, ownership will look different for every couple. And so that essentially means that it is a personal thing. So ownership in BDS terms pertains to the relationship between a dominant and submissive. So when you are talking about being owned, this is in the sense it's a relationship that is associated with an owner, i.e. the dominant, and a slave, i.e. the slave. But you don't have to use slave. You don't have to use dominant. You can use whatever, kind of terminology you and your partner want to use.
Right.
This means what you want it to mean. Like, obviously this goes without saying. I feel like we all know this, but I'm just going to repeat myself. Like, as with everything in a dom-sub relationship, the definition in terms of ownerships are communicated about and negotiated. Some people, they're like, they can come to this quickly. Other people kind of takes a while to negotiate the terms, but you should be comfortable if it takes you a long time to talk about it, if it takes you a short time to talk about it. If you must be going into it with a fuck yes.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
No rushing. I mean, this is something that I think specifically as women we do a lot is we compare ourselves to other women. We compare our relationships to our friends' relationships with their partner or partners. And I think that's where, you know, societal pressure and norms can step in and make you feel like you're rushing into something when you're not ready for it. So, I mean, we cannot stress or emphasize how important communication is in any relationship, especially one involving sex.
Totally. Yeah. And I do feel like the word ownership, especially if it's kind of if BDSM is new to you, if kink is new to you, can feel like a very daunting word. And like people are like, okay, well, what does ownership mean?
Right.
And again, like I said, depends on the couple. For some couples, ownership could spill out into everyday life, meaning your dom could choose your clothes, your hairstyle, what jewelry you wear. For other couples, ownership just, you know, is strictly for playtime, or there's like a variation of the two.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things we discussed in one of our very first episodes of the podcast is that, you know, just because you have a dom sub relationship, that doesn't mean that that's how you live every moment of your life.
Of course, yeah.
Doms and subs and anybody kinky can have vanilla sex. They can have rough sex. I mean, it's silly to like place a specific standard on it because we know that every couple's different, whether you're a kinky couple or not a kinky couple.
So I know some people are probably asking like, okay, well, what is the difference between ownership and submission? And I think that's a good question because they do go hand in hand. But like not all submissives care to be owned by a dominant. The main difference is that ownership cements the commitment between a dominant and a submissive versus other dom-submissive relationships where the commitment terms is like monogamy. But ownership in itself is very distinct.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, again, to an outside ear listening to this, especially to, you know, I do read a lot of like slave play erotica. And sometimes when I look at the reviews of it, they're to outside readers, they're just like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is insane. This is sex trafficking. You know what I mean? And
then
it's like,
don't read it.
Right. Yeah. But I think my point is that yes, like I have a lot of opinions on that, but it's just like, people are like, oh, well, why would someone be into this? And it's like, one, a lot of people are. Two, maybe Amazon should have done a better job, you know, like advertising this like erotica about like what's, you know, ownership is.
Right.
So to those people who are like, okay, why would someone want to be owned by someone? Why would someone want to own someone else? Here are a few reasons why this could be sexy. For a submissive, ownership can be about security.
Yes.
When you're owned by your dom, you have security. You know the terms of your submission are ironclad and that your dom is your dom until you have some type of agreement that otherwise, you know, negates that. It is in a way kind of like a courtship or a marriage, but it's different because essentially you are taking a vow. You're taking a vow.
Yeah, I am yours. I belong
am yours.
to you. And I get it. I mean, there's a reason why marriage is so appealing to so many people, and it's for reasons like that. Now, I know that marriage is not for everyone, nor is being owned.
Right, yeah.
But I do understand the appeal of, you know, belonging to someone or having someone belong to you and you alone.
Totally. And, you know, on the other end, for a dominant, ownership can be about celebration. So if you own someone or if you have a submissive submit to you in a very intense way, it feels good. It feels incredible. And when you want to feel incredible, when you have an incredible thing, you celebrate them.
Yeah.
It's such a strong bond between a dom and their submissive, and to cement that ownership link between the two of you is celebratory.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers, celebration. So then going back to another reason why it's sexy for a submissive is that the ownership is about obedience. And I feel like I say this a lot in our episodes where we talk about like some specific kink, and I feel like I always say the term, this kink is the ultimate act of obedience, or this kink is the ultimate act of obedience. And it's like, yes, this kink, like, yes, ownership is the ultimate act of obedience. And then you know what I realized? I was just like, oh, it depends on the person what ultimate act of obedience is. You know what I mean? And I just like am now realizing that as like how long have we been hosting this podcast? You know, like oh yeah,
I love it. It sounds like we're like a used car salesman. Like, this one over here, this is the ultimate act of obedience for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess I need to start using, or like be like, okay, for some people this can be the ultimate act of obedience, and it's like nadai. So it can mean, you know, giving up other play partners so you can focus solely on your dom. That's hot. It can mean that your dom is giving up things given things from you that no one else does. And it can be an amazing way to obey and submit to your dom if you are ready to take it to the next step.
Absolutely.
Another thing that I think is hot about this is that for a dom, owning someone is a source of pride. When you own a submissive, it can be very prideful. It's this beautiful, obedient, perfect submissive has decided to give you the most precious thing that anyone can give to you, their obedience and their loyalty, and that feels good. That's a turn on. That's a huge point of pride, and it can really add a lot of fun to playtime.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's not to be proud of, you know? I mean, and celebrate. I mean, it goes right back to celebration too. It's, you know, you have somebody that's submitting to you and they'll do just about anything for you. That's huge. I mean, that makes anybody feel great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like any type of sexual relationship, this ownership is being owned or owning someone else is enhancing the connection that you already have. So there's a lot to be said about many kinds of like dub-sum relationships. They can all be quite intensive given the emotions and high arousal levels that come with it. However, there is something quite specific to be said about deciding that someone owns you. This isn't something that's done lightly. And I think that getting to the ownership level is a way, or like is this way to take your relationship to the next level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was about to say leveling up, you know. I mean, this is definitely, it's another layer to add. Like, and every time you add a new layer to your relationship, it definitely gets more complicated. It definitely takes a lot more communication to be able to sustain the healthy connection that you have. But if you are able to do that and you are able to have these great conversations and clearly define what it is between the two of you, then it will absolutely make your relationship stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are a few things to think about, like when you are in a healthy relationship. What does a dom need to be doing? What does a submissive need to be doing? And this is on the Sofia Gray website. But but I just think it's important to reiterate, especially for an ownership relationship, is that as a dom, you need to be independent enough and removed enough from the situation to keep a cool and level head during intense sessions. However, you need to depend on your submissive enough to let them in, to care for them. You know what I mean? Like, if you are owning someone, you need to take care of someone. Like, this isn't just like, do you know what I mean? Am I making sense? Like, this is, and everyone knows this. What am I saying? Like, you know, but like, this is a form of love. This is a form of connection. This is a form of lust. And trust.
I think the trust has to go both. I mean, we've talked about it before that, you know, in some ways being a submissive is like almost like being a dominant, in that they really do have a lot of control over the situation. Like, they're the ones that get to say no to certain things. They're the ones that get to define limits. And so there's so much trust that a dom has to place on their sub, and then vice versa, that a submissive has to place on their dom.
Absolutely. And I think that's the next thing is that, like, if you are being owned, that doesn't mean you don't have power. You're the one, like, when I think of this, I think of, like, like, a sexy image is, like, a woman walking into a room. She's in a harness, holding her own leash around her collar. She walks up to an owner. She hands him the leash. And that's what it is. This is what it is. Being owned is you handing someone the leash. It's not someone kidnapping you. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right. I mean, no shade for anybody that wants to play out their kidnapping fantasies.
But the thing is, you are letting yourself be kidnapped in that fantasy.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I
You're
mean?
saying, this is what I want to happen, babe. Let's make this happen tomorrow after work. You're going to kidnap me.
Because, like, relinquishing power is the most powerful thing someone does. Yes. And so that's what should make you feel safe in this type of relationship. If you don't feel safe, you shouldn't be in that situation.
Right.
And that said, in an ownership situation, I find this so important, is that you should know that you have the power to leave any conversation, any place, space, any relationship that makes you feel bad. You don't want to get yourself into a toxic relationship in this instance.
It's to get out. Like, do you remember the movie Get Out? Jordan Peele's movie,
sure.
Get Out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and there's the part where, what's his face is just yelling at him, "Get out! Get out!"
Uh-huh.
I want that put on one of those buttons that people, like, smack on their desk that say yes or good job. I want the get out button for every time I hear about bad relationships or bad dates or bad, whatever it is. I want the get out button. Otherwise, you're just going to keep hearing me say on this podcast, get out.
I know.
Get out.
Yeah. We need to, like, add that as a sound effect,
I'll work on that. I'll work on that in post.
Yeah. Can you just, like, get a button? Can you get a get out button, please? Thank you, Lacey.
I'm going to work on it.
So if you were curious about starting an ownership relationship, I feel like the first thing people think of when they think ownership is, like, collars. Someone's collared and now they're owned. And I do think collars are hot. There's all different types of collars you can use. It can be simple accessory or a prop, or it can be, like, these beautiful, like, diamond encrusted collars, like, that are just like, oh, I will never be able to afford it, but I want it. Like,
I mean, if you're gonna do it right.
Right? No, but even if you can, there's all different types of collars. But it's like, it's kind of neat because it can be symbolic of a wedding band. It's a type of collar that you and your dom can, like, select together, and it should represent, again, whatever you want it to represent. There are also different types of collars you can use. There's, like, you can have a collar that's your consideration collar of, like, I'm considering owning you. Here's your consideration collar. And then you can go to, like, the training collar. And then maybe once you're onto foreign ownership, you get the gold diamond encrusting collar that's $4 million that you deserve. No, you should be any collar.
Like,
I just really want a gorgeous collar.
It's like sexy karate belts. Like, you get, like, your black belt, green, I don't know what color belts they give them in karate.
But I believe you. If you said any color, I'd be like, great.
Yeah, black, blue, yellow, green, red. That's it.
So conversely, if it's because I know, like, when we think ownership, it's like I said, collar. It's like, I guess you have to put a collar around me. No, you do not have to have a collar to be owned. It can be whatever you want it to be. There's so many different things and that you could do, like, whether it's like a jewelry or a tattoo or whatever. It's like so many, like, it's like whatever is important to you and in your partner. And you don't have to, like ownership shouldn't be like paint by the numbers based on things you've read, things you see, things you even see on, online stores. It should really be something that is meaningful between you and your partner. No one else.
I love the idea of a tattoo.
I know, yeah. And there's like a tip for that too. Like if you're like, oh god, I don't want to get a tattoo, use a fake tattoo for a while because you can make your own fake tattoos. And I was like, oh yeah, good point. I keep forgetting that. You know what I mean?
It's like what you were saying with like the different types of colors, like a color of a consideration and then a training color. It's the same thing. You get the temporary tattoo, you know, that lasts for a few days, and then I'm gonna pay a little more for that one on Etsy that lasts for 2 weeks. And you know, I mean, I can see that. I think that's a great idea.
It's awesome. Yeah. So like we mentioned before, you have to have a talk about this before you start. You guys have to have a specific definition of what ownership means for you, and keeping the door open to talking about if that definition changes.
Yeah, and you know what? If your partner is saying that they want to try this out with you, but they are not willing to sit down and have this talk, to talk about the details and the parts that might be a little uncomfortable for both of you, get out.
Yes, she's hitting the button.
Get out.
I don't know if you guys see
right
this.
now. But it's true. Like it's fine to say these things, to say, I want to explore being owned by you, or I want us to explore a dom-sub relationship. But it's all talk until you are actually sitting down and having these conversations, and maybe even putting something on paper, maybe, you know, making a contract, a declaration, whatever it is, you know, buying the rings, getting the tattoos, like actions. I know we have like the phrase of actions speak louder than words, but like it really, you need it both. You need both the words and the actions. Like it can't be one or the other.
Yeah. And I think that's a good segue into this next idea, which is having a contract. Because I feel like, you know, nowadays, like since 50 Shades of Grey came out, like, you know, with like the contract scene, and people are like, that's ridiculous. You have to do a contract to fuck? And it's like, no, I think they're great. I think BDS contracts are great. Like if I had, like, did I ever tell you I wanted to be a BDSM contract lawyer?
We've talked
that's
about
my
that.
Goal. Like I don't think that's a
of
thing.
The podcast. Yeah,
that's the thing. Like I really want to be like, I want to like represent both like submissives and doms into this like thing. Be like, okay, I want to change the language of this form. But I do think, okay, I'm joking around, but I actually do think it's good because you can like, having a contract can really give you the sense to like kind of really, you know, outline what is involved, what makes something valid, what are your responsibilities, what are the dom or sub's responsibilities, what are your limits, what are the safe words. There's a list on sofiagray.com about BDSM contracts, and there's this huge there's 16 things you can talk about, and I'm like, whoa, it's so comprehensive. I'm so turned on right now. Contracts.
Yeah, it's so true. And honestly, if anybody out there listening is either has either created a contract for them and their partners, or if you have Tracey's dream job and you've actually been someone litigating over a contract, oh my gosh, would we love to hear from you.
Oh my God,
please,
I would love to hear from a BDSM contract lawyer.
I want to know so much. We have so many questions, and honestly, I just really think it's something that more people need to know about. So I know, would love to hear about it.
I don't know why I'm so turned on by long packets of paper with tiny letters with legal jargon that I have never heard of in sentences I cannot comprehend.
I don't know either, but I do get it. I do understand the fascination.
Yeah. So finally, if you're wondering if ownership is right for you and your partner, here are a few things to consider. One is these things take time. To have to be in an ownership situation like this, you're building connection, you're building trust. It doesn't happen overnight. You know what I mean? I think it's like we said, hey, we should lay out, you know, our limits and everything that way. But I feel just also don't go in with any expectations that the first time is going to be like that every time.
Oh, well, and also, when has the first time of anything been perfect, let alone the first time with anything sexual? Like, I'm sorry. I do not know. I don't know anybody who's told me that their first sexual experience was the most gratifying, enlightening experience of their life. Like, it takes time. And it's also, again, easy to say certain things like, this is what I want, this is what I need. And then when you get into the bedroom and put them into practice, it's not as easy necessarily to make that happen. So it's totally understandable to, you know, go into things and know that so long as you have someone or someones that are willing to work with you and practice and get things right and talk about it and talk about what works for them and what doesn't work for them, then it'll get better. It'll get better.
Absolutely. Another thing that's important to remember, which we always say again and again, responsible doms understand their submission is a gift, and submissives understand that the doms also need to be needed and wanted as well. This is an equal relationship. As you know, dom is not actually in charge of everything. The submissive, you know, has a lot of power. Everyone has a choice whether to be in this relationship or not. You can leave if you want to. If you don't, you know, make sure the other person wants to be in the relationship.
Right.
Aftercare is essential.
For everyone.
Correct.
Yeah.
You should always end your playtime in a healthily and make time for aftercare. I actually like aftercare a lot. Like, I think that's like...
I do too.
My favorite thing.
And you know what? It's important for the doms too. I think people have this misunderstanding that aftercare is just for submissives, and that's not true. So in fact, I want to say we have a great article about it on Sofia Gray's blog, talking about, you know, the key to aftercare for doms as well. So I highly recommend people read up on that.
Yes. As you know, all play requires a yes. If it's a maybe, if it's a sure, put it off for another time.
Get out.
Or talk about, or, you know, and if you and talk about it. But if the talk isn't going the way you want, then hit that get out button, please, and get them people out of there.
I feel like we could make a fortune on those buttons, but there's got to be some sort of copyright infringement to them.
Yes. And this next tip, I think, is always needs to be remembered, is that consent is ongoing. Consent can be revoked at any time by either the dom or the submissive, even if the submissive and dom have previously agreed to do something. If it's in your contract, if it's written in your contract, okay, but consent should negate that like bullet point in the contract. Consent is ongoing. Consent can be revoked at any time, no matter what is said in your contract.
Regardless, If you said, baby, I want you to come over and we're going to do this and I'm going to do this to you and you're going to do this to me, and 5 minutes in, you're not feeling it, that's it. Call it quits. Pull the plug. Get out.
Yeah,
like,
get out. Yeah.
There's no reason. You do not owe anyone anything. And if the person you are with knows you, loves you, you know, you guys have a great, strong relationship, they will absolutely understand. It will not be an issue. And if it is, get the fuck out.
Yes. And finally, I feel like the final tip I could give you, and Sofia Gray could give you, is do research.
Yay!
Research, I know, doesn't seem all that sexy.
Oh, I disagree.
You disagree. I feel like, you know, like, yes, okay, fine. Research could be sexy. But if you're unsure, if you don't know the risks, if you want safety precautions, listen, like, I'd say err on the side of being over-prepared than under-prepared when it comes to things like this. You want to do this in a safe way, and when you feel safe, you feel sexy.
I want a PowerPoint. I want a PowerPoint presentation for my research.
Exactly. Someone provide Lacey with the PowerPoint all about ownership. So yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it, like, in terms of kind of an intro to ownership and like what that could look like. But again, like, as I was saying, it's kind of like this like amazing, like mind-boggling kind of topic about like what does ownership mean, and the fact that it is so different for everyone, and it's like such a turn on in different ways. So I think, again, overall, this is just something to explore with you and your partner, and taking the time to understand what ownership means to you.
Amen.
Whether you're looking to buy or sell used panties, Sofia Gray has got you covered. If you want to earn some extra cash, you can set up your own shop in minutes and start selling your own used underwear. And they take no commission. You'll keep 100% of every single sale that you make.
If you've got a kink for used panties and you're looking to buy your next pair, look no further. The whole process is completely anonymous. Sofia Gray will never share, store, or archive your personal information. The name Sofia Gray won't even appear on your bank receipt. So head on over to sofiagray.com to start selling or buying used panties now.
If you're a fan of the podcast, we hope you'll subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming platform. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts to let us know what you think. And while you're at it, feel free to share your feedback or questions by sending an email to podcast@sofiagray.com. Until next time, I'm Tracey Bust.
And I'm Lacey Bloom.
And we're here to say, let them be kinky. There is no kink shaming here.